Over the past 50 years, freeway infrastructure has exploded, going from these simple 4-lane roadways to massive walls of lanes and ramps, complete with frontage roads and express lanes, all in the name of creating the most efficient travel possible. Especially in states with suburban expansion, they had the ability and room to build these large freeways, so cities such as Houston are known for their over-the-top designs. And this brings up the question, which cities and states hold the widest freeways? Some states lack the high traffic required to build these 20-lane mega highways, but others feel it's a requirement, highlighting the diversity in situations and ideas across America. So today I'm going to talk about that in an objective way, detailing the different situations that create every state's widest freeway. Before that though, let's talk about my objective, non-biased content that I go for on this channel. I personally love making content that can be enjoyed by anyone, regardless of your knowledge level, which is why I really love the sponsor of today's video, Ground News. Ground News is a platform that shows your news in an objective way, comparing different sources and highlighting possible political differences to give readers more context about the sources of their information. And I personally believe this is a really valuable push that I love to see in the media. Let's take the current possibility of military deployment to Chicago in the coming weeks, for example. This has a high variability in political bias, with 197 sources reporting in every which way, with different headlines like this one and this one, taking totally different directions on how they want to portray it and if they want the possible deployment to look good or bad. This isn't what we want from our media. Ground News also has important features like Blind Spot, where you can check for stories that are disproportionately covered by one side of the political spectrum. Or if you want to just focus on a specific topic that interests you, it has interest pages that help you keep it simple and keep political bias out of your life. So go to ground.news/Beaver and subscribe for 40% off unlimited access to worldwide coverage. The idea of Ground News is one I feel very passionately about, so I'd really appreciate if you would go check them out. This is what news should be, so let's get back to the video. A wide freeway is a difficult thing to calculate, and most of these lane counts can differ by a few. If you go off of total lanes, do you include frontage roads? How about large interchanges that could count total 50 lanes across? Both of those would change the answer significantly, but I personally decided not to count them. And I'll tell you right now that the Katy Freeway is no longer at the top because of it, so let's get into it. Tied for last place, first we have US 20 and 26 in Casper, Wyoming. One of our only entries not on an interstate at 6 lanes. Next we have I-89 in Burlington, Vermont, which is the state's largest city at 6 lanes. And then we have I-90 in Billings at 6 lanes. Moving up, we have I-29 in Fargo, North Dakota, which gets up to 7 lanes briefly, and is the only entry at that number. Into the 8-lane highways, tied for 43rd, we have I-66 and 74 in Charleston, West Virginia, right in the downtown. I-29 in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, which reaches 8 near the fairgrounds. I-95 in West Portland, Maine. And finally, the Seward Highway in Anchorage, Alaska, which finds itself in a nice position on this list, despite Alaska's unique traffic situation. Now, tied for 41st place, we have our most unexpected entry on this list, which is I-205 in Portland, Oregon at 9 lanes. Oregon is 27th in state population, and Portland is actually a pretty large metropolitan area. But for this case, the state actually has some pretty tight laws regarding freeway size, and their entire history involves fighting against them. So I-205, which isn't even in the downtown, takes the cake near a simple shopping district and hospital. Tied with it is I-30 in Little Rock, Arkansas to the east of the downtown, which is briefly at 9 lanes. Into our top 40, we have I-26 in Seven Oaks, South Carolina, just north of Columbia, where we get into double digits with 10 lanes. Tied with that is I-93 in Manchester, New Hampshire, right before a large interchange, where it also gets up to 10 lanes. And the last one is I-55 in Jackson, Mississippi, which has that impressive 5 lanes on each side with no extra funny business. The only state with 11 lanes is in 37th place, with that being Idaho with I-84 in Boise, as close as it gets to the downtown. Next, we get into the most common lane total here, which is 12 lanes. So tied for 31st would be I-95 in Warwick, Rhode Island, well outside of any downtown area, but fairly close to the airport. I-25 in Albuquerque is next, which actually is in the downtown, and it has large frontage roads next to it, so it hits above its weight in the super cool category of giant walls of concrete. Another 12-lane highway is I-65 in Louisville, Kentucky on the MLK Expressway. This one's victim to the airport, which always inflates the infrastructure in cities. Next, Delaware finally isn't last in something, with the Delaware Turnpike on I-95 in Wilmington, which, despite the large median, does reach 12 lanes here. We have 2 more 12-laners, with the first being in East Hartford, Connecticut on I-84, and the second being on I-20 and 59 in Birmingham, Alabama, just west of the downtown. Tied for 29, we have two highways at 13, with the first being I-95 in Baltimore, Maryland, where the beloved expressways come into play and add 5 to our total. The other 13-lane highway is I-35 and 40 in downtown Oklahoma City, and this one doesn't need express lanes, it's just juicy freeway goodness. Moving up a lane, we have another long run of 14-lane highways right before our halfway point. The first one is I-41 and 94 in southern Milwaukee, another victim to airport infrastructure. Next is I-40 in North Carolina, which is surprisingly in Statesville, not Charlotte or Raleigh or anything like that. I-94 and 35 in downtown Minneapolis is next, being a really large and wide segment in the state. And it's also tied with the Jeffries Expressway on I-96 in Detroit, Michigan. Keep in mind I chose not to count the border crossing, which is like 12 million lanes, so you're welcome. We have a couple more 14-laners, with the next being I-93 in Boston, Massachusetts, just before the downtown Big Dig project. And finally, we have I-20 in Shreveport, Louisiana, beating out New Orleans and Baton Rouge. Good job, Shreveport, I guess. But we then reach just over our halfway point, and this is where things start to get crazy, so be aware of that as we keep going, because they get really big really fast. There's another 5 freeways at 15 lanes, the first of which is I-65 in Nashville, Tennessee, well outside the downtown right before this interchange between 4 different roads. Next is I-95 in Philadelphia, which is the 5th entry for I-95 on this list, and it's not going to be the last. Yet again, it's in the same area as an airport, and it's by no means a fun drive, I know by experience. I-15 in downtown Las Vegas also hits this list right here, and this segment is a bit wider than the lanes show, but it's right before an interchange, so it's hard to tell what's an exit ramp and what's a freeway. Iowa hit way above its weight here with I-29 and 80 in Council Bluffs. This is a weird situation where the highway has different lanes for local access and express access straight to Omaha, which inflates its total. And somehow it's tied up with the Kennedy Expressway in Chicago, Illinois. The Kennedy is just another high-capacity, high-traffic route in Chicago, and there's a lot more right around here. But on the north side, I-90 has been built up the most. Tied for 14th, we have 4 freeways with 16 lanes, and now we're getting into the big dogs, starting with I-5 in Seattle, Washington. It has a lot of lanes in a lot of places, but just north of the downtown, the express lanes and general traffic lanes add up to be the most. Ohio has I-271 in Warrensville Heights, meaning the Cleveland Metro takes the cake on this list with that 16-lane total. I-80 in Omaha, Nebraska is next, and this is actually a crazy spot for this state when you compare it to the next one up, which is I-75 in Atlanta, Georgia, a city known for its high lane totals. I mean, here's my stock footage of a highway in Atlanta with a ton of lanes. But no, the winner is actually way farther north near Truist Park at 16 lanes, not in the downtown. Next we have 3 highways tied for 11th place. The first is the Whitestone Expressway in Queens, New York at arguably 17 lanes. I don't know, it's a mess. Next is I-75 in Miramar, Florida. Since the whole Miami Metro is oriented north to south, this highway has a very high capacity, the most in the state. Then the final highway at 17 lanes is I-25 in Denver, which is no surprise to me with how crazy it gets in the downtown. We then get into the big top 10, and there are some unexpected ones out there. A lot of this has to do with how new these freeways are, and really just how much room they were given to build, because we all know the engineers will use what they're given. In 10th is I-15 in Salt Lake City, Utah. The highway has a ton of traffic in an incredibly important commercial district. It's just south of the downtown, and right next to the large interchange with I-80, so exit lanes and stuff get this total to 18 lanes. Also at 18 lanes is the Katy Freeway on I-10 in Houston, Texas. So yeah, without the frontage roads, it's no longer the widest out there. And even though this was Texas's list to lose, they really weren't able to get that far up on the list, and instead had to be tied with Hawaii, one of the biggest surprises on the list. Hawaii Interstate 1 has 18 lanes near this interchange in Honolulu, though I will tell you to take it with a grain of salt, because honestly, I can't tell which is part of the highway and which isn't, so I just included everything. So honestly, maybe it's actually a way lower. 7th place is I-70 in Indianapolis, Indiana, another airport infrastructure victim. Looking around, you can see there isn't a ton else going on here, but there's a big interchange, and they had room to give this freeway 19 lanes. Another arguable entry is I-49 and 470 in Kansas City, Missouri. It's 19 lanes across, it just depends what you count, since it's basically 2 freeways on top of each other. But I don't know, something about the right-of-way being the size of 2 football fields was too cool not to include. Moving up to 21 lanes is our next one, another arguable one, this time in Lenexa, Kansas. The same metropolitan area as the last one. This 5th place entry is partially exit ramps and other confusing things, so fight me all you want, but I've got it up here. A bit harder to argue though is the other 21 lane entry, the Dulles Toll Road in Tyson, Virginia, which has so many moving parts and things going on. It more just has to do with this massive commercial district to the south of the highway, and so it needs those 21 lanes. Into our top 3 we have 3rd place, which is I-10 in Arizona at the Broadway Curve. This one has been touted as the widest freeway in America, but with our rulings it instead takes 3rd with 22 lanes. If you don't know, the area is newly constructed and has insane capacity to fight off this large bottleneck in Tempe, Arizona. Finally, we have a tie for 1st place. The first one to mention is I-95's final entry, this time in New Jersey. Being just north of the Newark airport, one of the craziest areas for infrastructure in the country. There's also a different ramps and moving parts here, but there's no interchange very close to it, so I think you can include it at 23 lanes. And finally, by way of alphabetical order, the winner is I-5 in San Diego, California, an absolutely insane highway. Looking at it, it's much more straightforward than most of the others. There's 8 total lanes of I-5 local bypass, and the inner freeway adds 15 more, adding up to 23 and being an unsuspected widest freeway in the entire United States and probably world. That's it though. These freeways are absolutely insane, and there's so many across the country that it's incredibly difficult to find them all and highlight all the engineering that's been done. I had my Discord members find and put together nearly all of these statistics, so a big thank you to them, and if something's wrong with it, yell at them and not me. Thanks for watching.